Right, it's the 16th day of August. Very good morning. I'm JORRAM SSONKO here. And it's a Monday with 19 minutes to go to the top of the hour. What a way to wake up in the morning and what a way to kickstart off a new week to all the viewers out there. Now, meanwhile, just a quick reminder, over the weekend, that was on Friday, the St. Peter's Analia SS proprietor Ignia Kavute was laid to rest. And he was a former engineer as well, and the former commissioner urban development in the Ministry of Water and Environment, and the same proprietor of St. Peter's Nalia Secondary School here in Namugongo. All right, there, and now we're going to we're actually going to deep into a conversation regarding the dilemma facing private schools in Uganda. We did have that conversation last week, but we're still following it up to see what do the private teachers have to say about these particular incidents, where most of them, not only the private teachers, but the private owners, having a number of loans, which has left a number of them, to auction their properties. And even the Minister of Finance, Honorable Matia Kasaija, did mention that they should sell off their properties so that they beat their loans, because most of them do have the loans. Now, joining me today via Zoom, I have Mr. Juma. I do have Mr. Juma Mwamula, who is the General Secretary, Uganda Private Teachers Union. And he's going to give us more insight of what, as the Private Teachers Union, are doing and what is their main goal when it comes to that particular union, and what do they have to say regarding the situation as of now. All right, Mr. Mwamula Juma, can you hear me? All right, we're going to get to Mr. Mwamula Juma shortly via that Zoom interview there, and he's going to give us more of what the private teachers union is all about. Meanwhile, they also do have a meeting today, and they are set to discuss more factors that are going to help teachers, not only the private teachers, but also the private owners to carry on with the situation that is happening in the COVID-19 and how most of them can move about. We shall also be talking about the online classes that are taking place, and how are the teachers surviving in terms of this. Does the union also have any platform or any initiative to serve or to bail out these particular private teachers and to also help them overcome the crisis of COVID-19? And meanwhile, Mr. Mwamula Juma.
Good morning for our viewers. So today, the name again is Mwamula Juma, General Secretary, Uganda Private Teachers Union. I am so glad to be on Smart 24 television this morning to speak about issues relating to teachers. Mwamula Juma is the General Secretary, Uganda Private Teachers Union, a trade union for teachers in private schools, whose intention and aims are to create a platform through which we can improve our socio-economic welfare through collective bargaining and representation. My brother, do you hear me?
Mr. Mwamula Juma, let me put you into this particular one. Now, as the trade union for the teachers, I do understand a number of private schools do have a number of loans, and do you know of any school owner who has lost property during this particular time?
Well, we know of several school owners. We also know of several institutions in the name of private schools who are indebted, especially as a result of this pandemic of COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdown. But unfortunately, it is always unfair for us to go about to make mentions of some of those names, because eventually they may go about to affect their business images, especially in the public. Parents, students may lose the confidence when they realize their school is indebted at any time can be closed down. So that then becomes a disadvantage. But I want to state that by around the month of June this year, a simple survey that was conducted, revealed that over 600 schools were up for grabs as a result of high indebtedness in loans and the bank responsibilities, which they had failed to make good of. And the reason why they had failed to make good of is because the schools were closed, and yet it is through school operations, especially when children are in schools and paying the fees, that schools are able to collect revenue, and it is always through that revenue that they are able to redeem themselves of issues of loans and others. So we are certain,
Mr. Mwamula Juma,
and that was by the month of June.
We've seen government initiatives coming out, the government coming up to say that they would be helping out the teachers in particular. But has the government set up an initiative, or has the government reached up to you as the union of private teachers and helped you out in terms of these particular loans that the schools are having, or as the teachers union also?
Has done of late, has done some responses, has done some, put down some initiatives to support the teachers. But as you may note, the help to teachers in private schools has just been coming accidentally. In the very inception, when schools were closed, His Excellency had an understanding that all teachers were well off and all schools were well off, until we came out to clarify that there are some private schools and there are staff who are very different, whose terms are very distinct from those in government schools. So upon that, His Excellency made a commitment of 20 billion shillings to teachers in private schools. He also went ahead to make a commitment of over 2.5 trillion shillings as a bailout to school proprietors for purposes of redeeming them from the loans that had accrued as a result of this lockdown. So that in itself is a good initiative from the person of His Excellency the President. But I must as well state that up to now, no single money has reached to any of the promised individuals. And part of the reason why these days have occurred is because of the selfishness of some persons within the corridors of Ministry of Education. I must state that, for instance, the 20 billion shillings that were promised to teachers, by now it will have reached the teachers, the intended teachers. But the confusion that was ignited in the corridors of Ministry of Education by some persons who wanted to extend their patronage, people who wanted to extend their hand of hegemon of domination, they failed that process. Instead, they hoodwinked a few gullible people out there, a few gullible teachers out there, that they wanted to invent a wheel through establishing a new formulation. But even when they went ahead to do the formulation of the new formulation they are calling the SSONKO or whatever, up to now, it is merely used for purposes of delaying, it is merely used for purposes of soothing in the media, but no single teacher has gotten support, no single funds has reached any one teacher, and yet their suffering continued to occur. Yes, I get back to you, sir.
We clearly are also following up on that particular story, as the government is actually putting on a number of stimulus packages for not only the education sector but for a number of sectors. And you've definitely heard from Mr. Mwamula Juma there that no teacher, or regardless, no institution of learning when it comes to private teachers has received any money from the government, and as the government does claim to have sent money. Now, Mr. Mwamula Juma, still on this particular one, I would like to also pose one question here. What initiative have you, as the institution, tried to come up with when it comes to making sure that the government reconsiders the reopening of schools? What have you had? What do you have in the grassroots that can actually make the government reopen up schools? Which conditions have you laid on board for the government to reopen the schools?
Thank you again, my brother. Firstly, is for us to remind ourselves of the purpose and cause for which schools were closed. It was closed as a result of the pandemic that was spreading and going up the environments in our schools at risk. The other thing is to remind ourselves that COVID is here, it is real, deadly, and yet it is a very expensive disease to manage. So many times, the better way to confront it is to avoid it. So at the time when we went into this second wave, is because the schools and school environment had relaxed on standard operating up to today. As a union now going forward with anticipation to do a reopening, we have mounted pressure, especially for the government, to ensure that there is adequate and timely immunization of at least all immunizable population within the school environment. For instance, we believe that it would only be safe when actually where possible all teachers
All right. Juma, talking about the fact that even teachers have to make sure that the vaccination is done. We did mention about that in fact, as the government is calling upon the reopening of schools, all teachers are supposed to be vaccinated, not only the teachers, but all students. As the government is procuring vaccines for children between 12 years to 18 years, that's the students, to at least make sure these students return back to school, because it's actually 2 years that a number of schools are not reopening fully, because they are still reopening in segments. And as we speak now, the only schools that have reopened are medical institutions, that is in terms of the medical students, and at the final students of the medical, that is to actually give away for the continuing students as well, and also add more nurses or more frontliners, or you can call them doctors, in a medical institution in Uganda, or in the medical sector or the health sector in Uganda now. Mr. Mwamula Juma, I would also like to ask of you. Okay, we've actually lost Mr. Mwamula Juma. We'll let you know if at all I'll be having him. Now, among the topics that we've been having of this particular hour, we've been having Mr. Mwamula Juma there. We're going to get back to him, as he's going to tell us what has the trade union, as the private teachers trade union, done so far to enable these teachers get vaccinated, as we're still in that particular story. Mr. Mwamula Juma, can you hear me?
Very loud and clear. I'm sorry, at one moment I got off and I was raising a point.
Done to make sure you enable these teachers get vaccinated, so as to call for the reopening of the schools.
I'm sorry I got off. I think it's because of technological issues or some network interruptions, but I was raising a point that at one time we went into the closure as an inevitable option. So the best way to go forward into a reopening is when we are reopening safely in a situation where our teachers, all the workers within the school environment and the children are safe. Because we know COVID is deadly and yet it is very expensive to manage. So one option we are putting all our efforts onto is to call on to the government to expedite the process of immunization. We know the vaccines that are coming in smaller quantities, but we want to call on to our leadership of the state to realize that education is a critical area, and therefore specific interest, specific attention must be given to the teachers, at least for all of them to get immunized at this critical moment. We should also bring on board other support staff who are part of the school environment, because many times we speak about teachers and we forget that within the schools, they are matrons, they are patrons, they are scholars who have regular and immediate interaction with our children when in school. So all these people should be given priority to take their job fully, and immediately we should have the schools reopened. That is the only sure way when we will see teachers getting back on rail, because apparently they are very bad off, and what seems to have been promised to them is much of hot air than anything else. And by the way, I also want to use this moment to thank Honorable Matia Kasaija. He painfully came out and said our school owners should sell off their schools to bail out themselves. The man was merely being frank. Because what happened, we have been treated to lies by officers in the Ministry of Education, giving us false hope that there is support that is coming, when actually support is not there. So the good in Matia's statement is that he came out frankly to tell people not to waste their monies. You would realize that at one time when Ministry of Education officials promised false air, as it is, teachers went about to pick their little money to organize themselves into associations, to organize themselves into circles, and even government officials took it as a business. For a circle to be registered at that time, it was costing groups about 1 million shillings. So teachers had to go around to mobilize that money to make sure they are registered. Now, after putting in those resources, eventually they have been denied the opportunity for which, the purpose for which they established their circles. So we thank Amatia that for him he was blunt. He came out and indicated to us that what we hoped will come from government is not there. But again, to the person of His Excellency the President, because we believe he has goodwill, we want to inform him that teachers are needed, their needs continue to exist, and yet what was promised to them has never come. So let him use his presidential powers to prevail over his people to ensure that the teachers are bailed out.
Omule Juma, now, shortly before we do break off, before we say goodbye to you, I would like you to also give us a picture of what is going to happen with the particular. I do understand you do have a meeting today as the Private Teachers Association. What do we expect from your, what resolutions do we expect from the meeting that you have today as the private teachers, before we do say goodbye to you?
Okay. Hello again. At one moment the network had disrupted the connection, so I didn't hear you well.
Well, I was saying, before we do say goodbye to you, I'd like you to give us just a final few remarks on what is happening on ground where you are right now, because what I do understand is you are having a meeting with the Private Teachers Association. So what are those issues, what are those key issues that you are here to address in this particular meeting today?
So there are a lot of happenings going on in terms of meetings, trying to do a debate for reopening of schools. But what is essential for us to take a note of is, for the teachers, wherever you are, please take time to go and get your job. Because we are doing all possible discussions, we are doing all possible push through the government to ensure that the schools are reopened. But we are certain that at the time when reopening will be declared, there will be a prerequisite for all teachers to have been immunized. So to the people who have hope that you will get back to school, to teaching, and that in itself is going to be the basis for which finally schools will be reopened. And to the appropriate teachers who had government money, that we are likely to take much more time and the attention than the nearby offices.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Juma there, who is the General Secretary, Uganda Private Teachers Union, the PTA, that is the UPTU, and who we didn't have a conversation with him. He's right in Ntinda there. They do have a meeting today to to sketch an opportunity, or to sketch a platform where the government, they can actually use to talk to the government to make sure that schools or private schools are reopened, not only private schools but also the government schools as well, because a number of teachers are jobless. And we've seen most of teachers now turning to mobile money agents, most people turning to border riders, others opening up marketplaces or becoming vendors in the markets, and also chapati vendors as well. But then we do hope all teachers have actually received this particular message from Mr. Juma Mwamula, actually calling upon all of you to make sure you go for that COVID-19 jab. Make sure you're vaccinated. That is actually going to give the government a clear picture of on how schools are going to be reopened. And as well, you should also we also call upon the teachers out there to make sure you get the vaccinations, and also the parents to make sure that your children are vaccinated, to make sure that we can definitely go back to the schools and the reopening comes to it. Meanwhile, there now we will also be giving you more details regarding that particular story when it comes to the education part of it, and in our following headlines day in day out, we shall definitely be giving you more on those particular highlights. Now we do go in for a short break, but when we do return, I have news updates as well as sports. I'm JORRAM SSONKO. This is SMB. Good morning. Smart 24, driving business.